Welcome to the Psy.D webinar. I'm Bradley Cypher, and I'm the admissions advisor for the doctoral program here at Divine Mercy University. The format of today's webinar is straightforward. I'm going to first move through a PowerPoint presentation where I'm going to highlight some of the most salient aspects of the doctoral program, and then we'll finish with some Q&A. So if you have any questions at any time during the interview or the presentation, please place it in the chat box, and I'll field your questions at the end of the presentation. Also note that I have listed my email and my Calendly as well as other resources in the chat box. So please send me an email, get a time in my Calendly, and I will happily look forward to meeting with you and speaking with you about the program. Okay, so without any further ado, a little bit about me. I actually, not too long ago, completed my doctorate PhD in theology at Ave Maria University. So I wrote my doctoral dissertation on addiction. I'm very interested in the intersection between philosophy, theology on the one hand, and psychology on the other, which is, of course, the very raison d'etre of Divine Mercy University. And my mission right now is getting people like you into the career of your dreams as clinical psychologists. So if you look at our school's history, where we are right now, we're one university overall, Divine Mercy University. We have two distinct schools, the School of Counseling and the Institute for the Psychological Sciences. The counseling school has a master's program that's chiefly online, and then the IPS Center houses both the residential doctoral program and the master's in psychology, and that's a totally online program. So our mission is to heal and honor the totality of what it means to be human by integrating psychological science with a robust, thoroughgoing Catholic anthropology, and in so doing forming mental health professionals of the highest caliber through rigorous academic and clinical training. We are located just outside of Washington, D.C. in the Sterling area. So if you enjoy city life, especially a place like our nation's capital, easy access to that. By contrast, if you enjoy nature, things like that, we also have wonderful sort of natural beauty to the west, especially western part of Northern Virginia, etc. So it's just a really great place to be, to live and work and study, to be a doctoral student in the Washington, D.C. area. Now, our school has a number of accreditation agencies that have spoken to our commitment to high academic and clinical standards as follows: the State Council of Higher Education in Virginia, the Association of State and Provisional Psychology Boards, the APA. Probably the most significant accreditation, as the APA grants licenses to clinical psychologists as well as accrediting schools of psychology. The Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, and National Council for State Authorization of Reciprocity Agreements. So all that said, all this is really just speaking to our commitments to high academic standards that will benefit you in the long run. Sometimes people will ask me, what's the difference between getting a master's degree and getting a doctorate, say like a master's in counseling versus Psy.D in psychology? While there are a number of differences and similarities, there are three main differences as far as I can tell. The first is the much more extensive overview that you get in psychological evaluation, testing, things like conducting cognitive tests, IQ tests, or personality tests, things like the Rorschach test or the Big Five personality test, things like that. Those are things that you might say are often the bread and butter of the clinical psychologist. Very often, this is not something that master's level clinicians do unless they get specialized training to do so, because testing is really, that's like bread and butter, the wheelhouse of the clinical psychologist. The second major difference is the raw volume, the time that you will get training at the doctoral level versus the master's level. 3,500 clinical hours are required for our own Psy.D versus 700 at the master's level. That's 5 times as much. I mean, that's a huge difference. And of course, your patients will benefit from your added training because you're just really going to be that much more prepared to help those in need. The last difference is, of course, the dissertation. The dissertation, we would distinguish broadly between two types of dissertation: the empirical and theoretical. The theoreticals tend to be much more idea driven. So if you are interested in how ideas are impacting clinical practice, that can be a great sort of option for you. By contrast, if you are more interested in data and gathering data and analyzing data, for example, maybe collecting data by disseminating a survey and then running a statistical analysis on the results of that survey and then drawing conclusions, that's a classic kind of empirical style dissertation. Historically, we've had about probably a lot more students doing theoretical dissertations, but in recent years, given more faculty hires in this area and a greater diversity of students, we've have around a balance between people that do theoreticals and people that do the empirical dissertation. It is a 5-year program, all told. You will receive both a master's of psychology and a Psy.D. So the Master's of Psych is given after the successful completion of year 2, and then the doctorates at the end of year 5. This is a good overall look at our curriculum. The first 2 years, as you can see, are rather dense with courses. In some sense, you might liken this or to something like medical school, right? Why do I say that? Well, there's much more of a focus on the science and the sort of like the head knowledge in the first couple of years. And then as you move through the program, it becomes much more clinically focused, right? The focus becomes on seeing your patients and conducting a clinic, making sure that your clinical hours are being taken care of, so that by the time you get to the 5th year, there's really no course requirement whatsoever. In fact, the 5th year is the internship year. Okay, so much as a medical student would go to a residency, whether it's whatever, dermatology, pediatrics, radiology, whatever it might be, the psychology student goes to an internship, and this depends on their specialty, whether it's, say, you're interested in a certain demographic, so you're interested in geriatric populations or adolescents or children or young adults, whatever that might be, or you're interested in a certain pathology, like you really want to work with the psychotic groups of people, or maybe you want to do addiction, or maybe you want to do bipolar or schizophrenia, whatever it might be. Chances are there's probably a internship out there for you. Now, these are some overall kind of broad discernment questions. Do you want to help people flourish? Are you interested in the science behind human behavior? Do you want to become an instrument of healing through the psychological sciences? Are you interested in performing psychological tests and assessments to diagnose your clients and create a treatment plan? Are you looking to start a career as a licensed mental health professional, but specifically as a clinical psychologist? And do you have the ability and desire to work with all types of clients, from more acute care to more challenging kind of long-term client cases? So if you're hearing this, this may very well be a good fit for you. Sometimes another question I'll get is, how does Divine Mercy compare to other APA accredited programs? Well, there are a number of ways in which we're quite similar. In fact, that we are APA accredited means that we have to abide by a number of standards regulated by the APA. So things like foundations in psychological science and research, integrity and practice, assessment, therapeutic intervention, and professional roles. And despite that similarity, we also are distinct in this one particular way, that is our Catholic faith. The way that we understand the human person is decidedly informed by a thoroughgoing Catholic understanding of the person, informed by revelation and tradition. So with this Psy.D, where might you find yourself? Well, there's so many places. The wonderful thing about psychology is there's so many different settings in which you might be able to work. So these are just a few of them: being in a psychiatric hospital, a military establishment, working in private practice. Private practice is probably the most common one, I would say. I think that it tends to attract up people that they want more freedom in their schedule. They want to be able to have maybe their own business. They're okay and might even enjoy, marketing themselves, selling themselves, things like that. Whereas if that's not your thing, if the whole business side of it is not appealing to you, you could certainly work in any number of other settings. Like I was saying, the military, psychiatric hospitals, and like an institutional kind of thing would be maybe a better fit for that type of person. Diocesan consultation is also very popular because given the religious nature of our institution, we've cultivated a very good reputation among Catholic dioceses across the country, really. And so many of our doctoral alumni will be hired by a diocese to, say, conduct psychological evaluations for young men applying to the seminary, for example, Catholic seminary. And that, of course, can really only be done by a clinical psychologist, because there are a bunch of tests to evaluate one's emotional fittingness for ministry. Okay, these are a few of our doctoral alumni, and they are speaking here to their experience with us. This is James Walovich. He says, in our clinical psychology program, the training is focused on healing the whole person. Kristen Long, I was drawn to the Psy.D program to serve others in a more profound way than my previous positions offered. Timothy White says, the school is not afraid to teach what it means to be human at every level, philosophically, psychologically, and theologically. That's why I like it. Kirsten Curtis, I'm so thankful for DMU. The faculty members are very supportive, and I've received a lot of hands-on clinical experience. Okay, this is the story of William Johnston, who is a current doctoral student with us now. He's almost done with the program. He's in this, I think, his very last year. And he's done a lot of work with combat and veterans and people who suffer from PTSD. He came from a military family, so let's hear his story.
Hi, my name is William Johnston, and I'm a Psy.D student at Divine Mercy University, currently approaching the end of my third year in the program. Military service runs in my family, and so both my grandparents served, my parents both served. This door, the Psy.D program at Divine Mercy University, opened the opportunity for me to continue to get that, conduct research, and hopefully implement a more robust program to treat PTSD as it relates to combat veterans. DMU has certainly provided the integration that I saw in terms of my formation, both the philosophy and theology core, in addition to the psychology curriculum, has provided me growth in terms of my faith and my role as a husband and father, and of course, a psychological clinician. So in essence, the Catholic Christian meta model of the human person is why I'm here, both for my own sake as well as the sake of my future clients.
Okay, this is another testimonial. This is from a recently graduated alumna.
I would say that being a student at Divine Mercy University or TN is one of the best things that happens to me. I really appreciate the great support from faculty members and also classmates. I have gained a great deal of knowledge in all aspects of clinical practice, research, and also professional development. DMU not only provides students with strong academic skills, but also prepares them for a career in psychology. I personally benefit from mentorship with academic advisor and clinical supervisors. As a person, what I most appreciate from DMU is that its mission helped broaden my perspectives in understanding a human person through the lens of Catholicism. Catholic principle, especially in hope, love, and faith, are very valuable and certainly helped me become a better clinician.
All right, I have one more of these. This is the story of Isaiah Lamb. Isaiah was a Catholic seminarian prior to joining us at Divine Mercy University, and now he's almost finished. He's in his last year. He's a intern at, I think, University of St. Thomas in, I want to say Minnesota, and he's doing college counseling. So he's almost done. He's almost Dr. Isaiah Lamb.
I'm originally from the state of South Dakota, and so I lived there most of my life. Went to school at Nebraska, Lincoln. I studied psychology there, but I kind of intended to go into the medical field. And then after, kind of in the midst of my undergraduate, I wanted to go to the seminary, private seminary, to study to be a priest. So I had this love for psychology that was kind of there, I think, from an early age, just wanting to know how people function, why they do what they do. And then I found myself in seminary, learning all these philosophical truths about humans. One of the first courses I took was philosophy of the person's body and soul, and that there's this profound dignity attached to being human. Later discerned out of the seminary, returned to Nebraska to finish up my degree, and deciding at this point, well, I don't really want to go into medicine, but I do like have this desire to care for people, and I also have learned again, like this philosophy about humans and goodness. So I took a year off. I built pipe organs for a year. I always love telling people that. It's a job, it's fun. But ultimately, that led me. I decided to then do a year of service with the homeless in Denver, an organization called Christ in the City. And there, I like to say that all the things I had been learning about and about psychology, philosophy, it was this incarnational experience of encountering people on the street in this profound suffering, mental anguish, and substance abuse, what have you. And just actually experiencing that firsthand made everything kind of click for me. Like, okay, I have the ability to affect change and bring hope to people in the worst moments of their life. And so for me at that point, it was just very clear everything was starting to converge, and I felt more so that I wanted to pursue psychology. So DMU was kind of my first choice, because everything that I had been learning about kind of just again converged to it, right? The psychology, the philosophy, the theology. And it's just the perfect fit. So I applied, long story short, and in my second now, and it's been absolutely more than I would have hoped for. I've had so much knowledge stuff in my brain the last year. I don't even know how it's possible, but it's just been a beautiful and awesome journey.
Right. This is a word about our faculty. To the left here is Dr. Lisa Kloicki. She's our dean. She's a specialist in assessment and therapy. In the middle is Dr. Diane Graves. She is our assistant program director, specializing in child and developmental psychology. This is Dr. Helena Ariana. She's our director of the clinic. And these guys were actually among the founding members of our school, dating back to the late 90s, early 2000s era. This is Dr. Scrofani, specializing in CBT and group therapy, Dr. Nordling in child, marriage, and family. And then Dr. Vitz, was his whole life and conversion is kind of at the center of our school. He actually used to be an atheist. He converted to Catholicism, and his early writing and Catholic conversion really kind of was what got this whole school started. Anyway, he recently retired, and he really kind of was the expert at integrating, philosophy and theology with psychology. All right, now to get licensed as a psychologist in the United States, of course, it requires a doctoral degree. After you finish it, there's about a 9 to 12-month period of supervision thereafter, and then you finally take your license exams. And then we have an imperfect but very strong, overwhelmingly strong license rate of 95% from the past decade of data. So if you have a Psy.D for us, there's very, very likely that you'll get a license. The other thing is that psychology is in demand. The modern world is sort of completely beset by any number of mental illnesses, and here it says the statistics indicate the average profession projected the next 10 years is growing at 3%, but psychology is growing at 6%. I mean, that's double. The other thing, of course, is you look at from a supply perspective, from a purely economic perspective. There are very few people with doctoral degrees that are practicing psychologists compared to the master's level holders in counseling. So when you couple a lot of demand for something with limited supply, especially the services, right? We talked about testing before. This is a formula for making a great income as a psychologist. Now, in terms of funding this education, it's $1,170 per credit for 122 credits is $142,740 over 5 years. That does not include, indirect expenses like housing, gas, food, that kind of thing. American applicants are, of course, able to get federal aid through the FAFSA form. And then we also offer on-campus work study for students. That's basically part-time work that accommodates your otherwise very busy doctoral schedule. And we also have a whole slew of scholarships that certainly you could take advantage of. I think the most important of them would be this one, the Merit Scholarship, which ranges between 50 to 25% off of tuition. These scholarships are given out to a few of the most promising applicants, and this is done by the evaluation of the faculty on the basis of your sort of academic record and also how well you do in the interview itself. Okay. The other scholarships are those to which you would apply on an individual basis. Usually a little essay is required, but I would not recommend working on that until after you are notified of admission, because I wouldn't want you to spend time on something that you couldn't get. Okay. There are a couple major requirements to apply. The first is a baccalaureate degree that's from a regionally accredited school. We do prefer that you have studied psychology, but in no way is that necessary. We've had successful applicants apply to our school from across the academic curriculum, everything from math and hard science and engineering to arts and humanities, and everything in between, the social sciences, for instance. We also require at least a 3.0 GPA on a 4.0 scale. If yours is a little bit shy of that, let's say you have a 2, 7, 8, 9, something like that. In some cases, we do allow exceptions, provided that you offer a letter of explanation, just describing what went wrong, and then we can hopefully get you into an interview. Good. Okay, so if this is all making sense to you, the first next step, that is, was to apply online. The online application is on our website. So if you just go to divinemercy.edu, there's a big red button at the top. It says apply. If you click that, then it will unveil the different applications for the different programs. And you want to hit the one that says Psy.D, and then it will unveil the doctoral application. So that's a pretty easy thing to do. It's mostly done, well, it's entirely done online. And it's a lot of data entry about where you live, where you went to school, couple basic financial questions. At the end, it will ask you about people who might potentially recommend you. There you want to put names of either professors that you've had or work supervisors, or some combination of the two. Either is totally fine, but what we don't want, however, are anything personal, like no friends, family, significant others, like none of that. Just keep it, academic and professional. Another common question that people ask about this is, whether or not I need to get permission from these people. Strictly speaking, you don't, because they're not going to get notified when you submit the application. It remains between us. The thing to do is, after you submit the online application, you would reach out to your recommenders and ask them for permission. Say, hey, listen, I'm applying to the doctoral program at Divine Mercy. Would you mind recommending me? And then they can say yes or no at that point. So if you have any questions about that, the how to proceed with recommenders and such, let me know, and I'd be happy to discuss that with you. Okay, so once the online app is in, then you want to turn your attention to the other elements of the application, which will eventually need to be received. So things like the admissions essays, there are a couple of essays we do have you write about why you want to be a psychologist, why you want to study at Divine Mercy, and what area of research would you pursue as a doctoral student. And there, we're not looking for bibliographies or anything like that. We just want a paragraph describing what your research might look like, just an idea, because at this point nothing is set in stone. It's way too early in the game for that, but we do want evidence that you are thinking about your academic future here with us and what that might potentially look like. Do send your resume that's updated, and then I just mentioned the procedure with the recommendations. The official transcripts, of course, will need to be sent to us, and that has to be everything that's post secondary. So whether you went to college or graduate school or both, all that needs to be sent in. We do require the GRE. Okay, so the GRE, however, is in no way, the most important element of the admissions process. Obviously, for some schools, many elite schools, the testing, the scores need to be very high. For our school, because we're a school of psychology, we're much more interested in you as a person. And that might sound sort of, hackneyed and cheesy, but it's just true that um, when faculty evaluate people, they're much more interested in whether or not the overall person is capable of becoming or has a promise to become a excellent clinician, an excellent psychologist. So if you do well in GRE, more power to you. That can help you sort of separate you from the crowd in a way. But to get in, you really have to have that kind of interpersonal abilities, at least in it's sort of like even in an inchoate and kind of beginning stages. So if you have questions about the GRE and the role plays, again, get in contact with me and I could help you with that. Okay, let's talk about international students. So if you are applying and you have done your degrees from outside of America, and especially if they don't have a GPA, like an American style GPA, those transcripts will have to be evaluated. So I highly recommend them be evaluated by educationalperspectives.org. It's a great service. You just, you send them your transcript and then they will distill your foreign transcript into an American style GPA. If English is not your primary language, okay, you would also need to take the TOEFL test. All right. So if you have questions about, well, what do you mean by primary language, get in touch with me and we can talk about it. But in short, if you don't converse in English in your professional life for the most part, or personal life, or both on a day-to-day basis, then you're gonna have to take the TOEFL. Okay, so but if that's still unclear, let me know and we can chat. Okay, the last thing to discuss is the interview itself. So once the entire application is finished, we have all of your materials, the online app and everything else, then you can be invited to an interview. Now we only have 2 interviews left this year, and this one is coming up, the January 24th. I mean, this is a little over a month away. This is a very popular interview. It's also the last chance to take advantage of the, I just mentioned earlier here, these the merit scholarship, this 50% to 25% off. The January interview is the last chance to be considered for that. So if you want to be considered for that, then I highly recommend you start moving forward on your application, because if you wait and you don't get in until March, then it's too late to be considered for the merit scholarship. I mean, you can still get into the school, of course, at that point, but not you wouldn't be eligible for the top scholarships. So give yourself that opportunity. Again, it's a popular interview. The seats are filling up. There's a limited, we just don't have endless seating available for everybody, unfortunately. So yeah, if you're serious, I would definitely take those steps to move forward to get into that January 24th interview. Okay, that's basically all I have for you guys. Let's see. I think there is at least a couple questions here. Let's see what we got. Okay. One question: how are we supposed to send the transcript if we are from another country? Is there any specific way to do that? Yeah. So that's a great question. This would be the kind of thing that we should probably talk about, individually, because it just depends on the country and it depends on their procedures. So email me, get into my Calendly, and we'll talk about the specific procedure for getting transcript from other countries. Robert, what can we expect in the interview day? Okay, so in short, the interview is an entire day-long affair. You're going to start at, I think it's 8:45 in the morning, and you'll be here until 6 p.m. Okay. So the morning hours are spent talking about the nature of the program. So it's sort of like what we talked about today, but the faculty will expand in a little more detail. There's also a Q&A for parents and significant others. Like, so when you come, you're more than welcome to bring loved ones, friends, family members, things like this. And the faculty will have a different kind of like Q&A for them. In the early afternoon and the late afternoons, that's sort of, excuse me, the late morning, early afternoon, that's the kind of like the heart of the interview. And there are two different interviews by two different sets of faculty members, right? So that's kind of like where you want to show your stuff. And then at the end, there's an on-campus interview, and that, excuse me, an on-campus sort of tour of the program and the campus, and then that's kind of ends the day. So it's sort of like meetings in the morning, interview in the middle, and then a campus tour, and that basically is the entire day. All right. Another person asking, do we have to choose a faculty member before applying? No, that's a great question. What you can do though is when you write your admissions essays, you can say, I can see myself working with, Dr. Graves or Dr. Oriana or Dr. Chloe or whomever. And that, but they understand when you do that, it's a totally tentative thing. Like you can say, well, I'm interested in child and developmental psychology, so I can see myself working with Dr. Graves on this particular topic for my research. However, it is at this point premature to, send them emails and ask them about possible collaboration, just because it's just not done. It's just not how it works in this kind of a program. Obviously, if you were working out trying to get into a PhD at Oxford, that's a different can of worms, right? But it just doesn't work that way. The research is part of the education, but it's not really at its centerpiece in the way that PhD programs operate. Okay. Robert, history of past students matching at local VA clinics. I'm not exactly sure what you're getting at there, Robert. I mean, there's a couple ways I could go with that. I think that, well, for one thing, I mean, in the third and the fourth year, you will be assigned a clinic, to work with in the area. For the internship, right? So the internship, right, you will be applying to internships basically all over the country, but there are also local ones, I think, if that's what you're getting at. We certainly have had people attend local clinics and they don't have to, relocate yet again in their fifth year. So it just depends on your priorities, on whether or not you're open to further relocation or you rather kind of like, stay in the area or whatnot. So that's a little bit about that. All right. Yeah, so Denny, get in touch with me and we can talk more about, your situation with the visa and international applicants. And then we can just kind of go from there. Apart from that, will there be any limit to the essay, and what are the things that need to be emphasized in the essay? Great question. There is a limit to the essay. So there's two different essay questions. And each of them are 500 words apiece. So I can send that to you, the essay questions and kind of with their instructions, the prompts. And it'll ask you like it's pretty clear, what they're asking for. And again, once I send that to you, if there's still questions, I'd be happy to talk to you then. All right. Good. Okay, everyone, listen, it's been good. I thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to hearing from you and helping you move forward if this program makes sense. Take care, and God bless.